The Hidden Figures Project is a project to identify and document the contributions of outstanding individuals from the BME community in Plymouth who have not previously been recognised. Today, I'm interviewing David Feindouno, founder of Plymouth Hope. Hello, David. Thank you very much for agreeing to this interview. Could you, first of all, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay. Thank you for inviting me. My name is David Feindouno. I come from Guinea-Conakry, which is West Africa, and I've been living in Plymouth for over 14 years now. So I'm currently a project manager at the British Red Cross for reunification pathways for integration, working with 5 other Red Cross countries. Outside that, I'm also a volunteer with different organizations. I'm a founder and chair of trustees of Plymouth Hope, as well as a board members of Hope FC and also Plymouth Hope CIC. Outside that, I'm also the co-founder and co-director of Diversity Business Incubator. And I also help with quite a few schools. I'm a member of a local academy trust that manages quite a few schools in the PL1 and PL4 area in Plymouth. And outside that, outside my hobbies, I do football coaching, which I enjoy doing every weekend.
You're a very community-minded person, David. Can you tell us a little bit about your values, your childhood? What led you to this place where you are now, and the passion that you show when you're helping all these young people?
Yes, so myself, I'm a born-again Christian, but I grew up from a Christian family. Both my grandparents were reverend. My father himself was a reverend pastor. So from birth, really, I grew up from that community setup where all my family were always there for others. My personal experience of that life of supporting others and being in the community was in the early 90s. Remember when I was in Guinea in my hometown called Gekedu, when the war broke in Liberia and Sierra Leone, which are neighboring countries. So refugees from Liberia and Sierra Leone had to come to Gekedu, which was the nearest town. And I still remember around 2 a.m., 3 a.m., our parents had to wake us up to leave our bedrooms, and for the refugees who were arriving, that was my first-hand experience as a child, seeing my parents supporting those refugees who were fleeing the war from Sierra Leone and Liberia. And I witnessed my parents, mainly my father, bringing different NGOs in our hometown to support thousands and thousands of refugees. For the next 5 to 10 years, the biggest refugee camp in the world was in Gekedu, my hometown. So throughout my childhood, I've really witnessed and I got involved myself in helping others. Children and young people who were my age arrive as refugees. So I think that passion got from the early age really, and it's never stopped. So for me, from then wherever I go, whatever I have, I see myself I've been privileged, but using that privilege to support others who may be less unfortunate. It doesn't matter what my own personal situation is, because I've also had my own challenges, but I look at myself as a helper for others, and I think that has driven my passion to help the community.
So I'm really interested in your passion for the community and bringing people together, David.
Yeah.
Could you tell us, when you first came to Plymouth, how you put all that into action?
Yeah, I arrived in Plymouth in 2008 as an asylum seeker, and like many other asylum seekers in the city or across the UK, you cannot be in normal employment. Your financial resources are limited. You are confined in certain accommodation that you share with others. So as a young person back then, I was very limited. But quite quickly, because I've grown from that background where I've always active in the community, the following day, when I arrived, I was already going around in local centers trying to find out where I can volunteer to stay active. So that's how I started being involved with some of the local organizations. I discovered at the time Refugee Action, the one in Cornwall, Refugee Support, Refugee First. And quite quickly, I realized that despite the work that was offered, there was something missing for ourselves, asylum seekers who were living in the city. As in, when those services shut down, there's nowhere to go. There were not many activities that they could take on themselves to really feel like they're giving back to the community. Or for some of those who found activities, those activities were limited because either we didn't have enough money to pay for them, because obviously as asylum seekers we can work. So that really struck me, and after actually, what can I do to make sure that myself I can stay busy and keep busy positively in a good way, use my time wisely, but also something that could benefit other fellow asylum seekers. Because quite quickly, I'm a people person. Within a week and 2 weeks, I saw other asylum seekers spending their day in my small room where I was living. To the small amount of money I had every week, I was cooking for many people. So I was like, okay, maybe let's try and do something. So that's how I thought, okay, because I've always been a keen footballer. I said, okay, let's start by kicking the ball in a park. So that's how we started the sessions. And I ran a quick survey. I went around all of the organizations in the city to find out what asylum seekers wanted to do, to keep busy and have opportunities to volunteer. And what came on top was really football, to bring them together, staying physically healthy and active, and also someone who can support them with finding volunteering opportunities.
So how did Plymouth Hope actually start? How did you put this concept together into something that it is today, which is fantastic? It's so big, it has grown a lot. Mm-hmm. What were the roots? Where did you start from? Where was the seed?
So, as I said, it was just to keep ourselves busy as asylum seekers, use our time wisely, and contribute to the local community. So the first formal session was in December 2008 at Central Park. So we sent leaflets around to make sure that they were translated, to make sure that everybody within the community knew about the first sessions. And to be honest, for me personally, I thought just lead on some activities, for people to kick a ball. The first session was really a turning point. We had about, I still remember the number, 54 people who turned up, more than 20 nationalities. And that was from white British, Chinese, Iraqi, Afghans, and different African countries and all of that. I think that was a turning point because myself, I was surprised, and other people who were helping me with distributing leaflets, everyone was surprised. And on the day, yes, it was my first time really to come across, even being from an ethnic minority background, so many diverse populations, so much. Because Middle Easterns, Asians, and Africans, we all went together. It was one language on the pitch, same rules, same objectives. Two teams wanted to win. It didn't matter really how good your English was. It didn't matter your social background. It didn't matter whether you work or you didn't work. We even had some white folks who were engineers who joined in, and everyone had their own barriers in the community. And that day, no one needed to know whether you were an asylum seeker or a refugee or an engineer. We just got on with it. And I think that first session was really the turning point. And we all left, including myself, oh, okay, this is something that we can use to support asylum seekers and to exactly achieve those objectives that we wanted to achieve.
So tell us about the festival, because that is a huge event and people look forward to that every year. Yeah. And it seems to be growing bigger and bigger every year.
Yeah, so the Plymouth Hope Festival, we started that a year later when we initially started Plymouth Hope. And it was through conversations with myself and one of my friend, Ricardo McDell, who had been in the city for a long time. So we wanted these core aims of social and community integration to be a bit bigger. So we wanted an activity using football that could bring people together, because we realized, well, actually, this social integration is only happening at our level. Yes, we are bringing people together and friendships being formed, and people then leave football and expand their social network. But we realized that it wasn't enough, because quite quickly people were reporting some of the incidents that were happening, and we thought, okay, actually, we need to use this football to bring other families together. So that was the idea around the festival, because organizing a football tournament, it started initially as a football tournament. Any team, if you have a dad entering, most likely they'll bring their kids, they'll bring their wives, the other way around. So we wanted to go beyond the male football player and start bringing families, create that opportunity that brings families together. So an Afghan family from somewhere, an Iraqi family and a white local can find themselves together and playing. So children who are completely innocent and they don't know anything can find themselves in a bouncy castle jumping together and all of that. So that was the initial idea of the festival. So bringing people together quite naturally. And the first time we just had under 500 people. That was the first year. And the second year coincided with the local authorities no longer financing Refugee Week. So we decided, well, actually, we cannot be here as asylum seekers, refugees, and Refugee Week is not celebrated. So after the first year, the second year, we decided, actually, we need to make this event the official launch of Refugee Week, so that it can encourage other people to come together. We approached the local Red Cross back then, who gave us some money. And from the second year, it kept on growing and growing and growing, more activities. 2008, I think, it was formally recognized by the Lord Mayor as the city's largest multicultural event, based on the impact they had seen and the numbers and the attendance. So yeah, the rest is really history is growing. We've had BBC News, ITV News, all of them attending just to showcase what the event does. So yeah, that's the history of the Plymouth Folk Festival.
And of course, there are lots of schools involved.
Yeah.
And lots of school children get an opportunity to play
Yeah.
with children that they would otherwise never meet. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's, again, the same concept around using football to bring people together. Over the last 4 years, we've had more than 80 football teams. This year, we already have 71 football teams confirmed. And that's from children and young people from age under 7 all the way to adults. And again, when children come, they bring their families. And in a true sense, everybody has been looking forward to the Plymouth Folk Festival. So they now know it's also the official launch of Refugee Week. So indirectly, we are also at the same time raising awareness about refugees. Just hearing the name and the word Refugee Week, parents, young people will go after and search and look, oh, what does it mean, a refugee? So we are at the same time raising awareness, but it's something that they realize, everyone's realized we have to come together as a community. Regardless of our differences, our race, our religions, our background, we can play together. If we can play together, we can enjoy food together, we can have a face queue be in a queue for face painting together. So anything that is done at the festival is that togetherness and connectedness that we see happening in front of us. And I think what schools take away, what children take away, is that if it's possible to do it during an event, yes, you can do it in your school, you can do it in your local community, you can do it with your faith groups. And that's really the message that we try to send every year. Let's bring people together. And we've seen many people who've actually said, oh, this is the first time I've really had a chat with someone who looks different. You know, so that is in the 21st century, but that is a reality. So those are some of the barriers that the event removes for everybody. Really.
And of course, although Plymouth Hope started with football, it has actually grown organically into many different areas and supports many different projects now. Could you tell us a little bit about some of those projects?
Yes, absolutely. So, because we started as football, there's a football club that's remained, has a football club. It has its own committee and everything. So the adult football is part of the local football league. It has been for 14 years. Well, in fact, we are now the longest serving club in the local league because since we joined, it has always been there. 3-4 years ago, we formally joined the local DGM, Devon and Junior Minor Leagues. So with that, we have about 50 to 70 children and young people who play football every week on the record, and that has never stopped. So what happens with the football club? Again, it's the same thing. It brings that diversity, really. For us, what we do through the football club, so for example, yesterday there was a massive celebration of our under 12 who came second. So the football coach, the main football coach is a refugee, the assistant is an asylum seeker. So it's bringing that diversity and that positiveness in the local football league to say, actually, what you hear in the media, these are people who can also contribute in the local community. And yesterday they were receiving their award in front of more than 2,000 people. Massive celebration for us, something we should be proud of. So the football club is growing. It continues to involve as many people as possible. The charity came from the football activities. So in 2012, officially, when we had one of our trustees, Lisa Barry, who is a vice chair, joined. She's a social worker by background. So she came in with that expertise, and that enabled us to set up children and young people's activities because we needed somebody with a safeguarding and children's services background. So since then, that's how the charity started growing. So we became a charity formally in August 2013. So as we speak, there are different projects within the charity. The first one is well-being in a sense of sport, physical activities, and social activities, and also psychosocial support. Not in a medical way, but purely in a social term where we organize, whether that's befriending or mentoring people who are very stressed, who can get support from their peers. The second project we have is asylum support and migration, so which is really giving asylum seekers a literacy for them to understand the asylum system. Because there is a scarcity of resources in our sector, but what we do care about is preventing the crisis from happening. We want every asylum seeker to know, actually, this is where you are in your journey, and this is what's likely to happen. So that also happens every week. The other project is loneliness and isolation. As part of that, we led on a program to install internet in more than 70 asylum seekers accommodations in Plymouth. Again, a unique project that was really successful. So following that, we are now a digital center working with Migrant Help, where asylum seekers can access anything digital at our offices, and we continue to provide internet connections in our offices. Future Youth, a project funded for 5 years, is basically looking at using sport activities to improve the educational performance of children, mainly refugees, asylum seekers in schools. So as part of that, we have homework support and a lot of other things that we do. And the way it works is just to make sure that every single asylum seeker who lives in an asylum home has got the opportunity to be active in sport, and also they can receive that educational support, as well as their parents who sometimes come in, they don't understand the UK educational system. So those are some of the activities that the charity does. And in addition to that, of course, advocacy, because what I've learned from it myself as a founder, and also my colleague trustees learn from it every day. So we try to use that learning and expertise to make sure that there are changes across us, because we cannot do everything on our own. There are other organizations. So we pass on our learning to make sure that there are changes, both within local authorities and also within the voluntary sector. So that is the charity in a nutshell. There's a lot that we do, but quite modestly, that's what we do.
Yes. Out of all the activities that you've done, can you tell me which has been one moment when you stood there and you thought, I'm so happy, this is fantastic? The most satisfying thing that you have done?
Oh, there are quite a lot. But I've got to say, every year, seeing the festival and the nature of it, how people come together quite naturally, how people mingle, and everything. It's we often call it that's our main big word. Thank you. It doesn't matter how many hours you put behind the scene, but just seeing people coming together, you just have those sentiment of feeling that, okay, we feel like we are doing something. So yeah, I think quite modestly, it's one of those events that really get us to remember what we do throughout the year, as well as seeing other organizations joining in and everything. So
That's good. You've received a number of awards
yeah.
and you've met some politicians.
Yes, throughout my time, yes, I've
And
been yeah, blessed and honored to be recognized for the work that I've been part of or I've led on. And it has always been encouraging. It comes at a time where you feel like, oh, actually, a couple of times I did consider jobs outside Plymouth and all of that. But then an award will come in and say, oh, actually, you need to keep doing it. So yeah, it's been a really a good privilege and with all humility to receive some of the awards, meeting some ministers at Downing Street, been invited to dine with the Queen in 2012 during the Diamond Jubilee, and all of that. So yeah, it's good, and also it's something that we pass on to others to say that if you do good for the community, you can be recognized. Don't expect to be recognized, but it can come from any angle at any time. I've never expected any of those awards. They keep coming in as a gesture of maybe people recognizing the impact of the work that I've been involved in.
what are some of the challenges that you've had to face? Funding, for example, I should think would have been quite a challenge.
Yes, I think it has been a humbling experience, really picking an organization from scratch to where we are. I've been involved myself with a lot of the funding bids. It has been a learning curve, just like any other organization. We've managed to fundraise what we can. The challenge we have with fundraising is obviously as we grow, we need to now look at more public fundraising, which is so that we don't rely just on grant. We've come up with few initiatives. For example, one strand of Plymouth Hope is the enterprise side of Plymouth Hope, where we've managed to fundraise and invested in printing equipment and also a minibus, which will enable people to give us donations as a way to invest that money back into the charity. Print for Good is a project of the CIC that we just set up, which is a brand. So this year at the festival, we will be showcasing products from Print for Good. So every single T-shirt or anything that people buy, we have branded footballs. At least 40% will be going back into the charity. So that's a way that we are trying to innovate, because let's face it, it is not easy when you are from an ethnic minority background to secure funding. We've lived through that, we've experienced that. The main challenges are, yes, we've been welcome in Plymouth, but we still feel that considering the work, the vast amount of work that we've been doing, we could have been recognized a bit more in terms of the city accepting the organizations to be established, because we've been doing way more than any other organization. That's in terms of statistics and impact that we've been having than any other organizations currently. But we still sometimes don't have that voice around the table to make sure that actually it's not about people who started it, it's not about people, it now needs to be recognized. So for example, the Plymouth Festival is still not recognized as a main city event. Despite all the success, it still needs to be recognized, but we still have to knock on people's doors to make sure that it's there. We have the Lord Mayor attending, deputies attend, MPs attending, so it's there. But why is it not recognized as a Nottingham City event? So these are some of the challenges that we still have, and the advocacy bit comes in, because obviously you recognize by 75% we are all ethnic minorities on the board of trustees and all of that, because it has to be driven by people who are receiving support, and that's the key aspect we want to keep within the organization. But the other side of it is the flip side of the coin is the support that we should be receiving for people is not as fast as it should be.
If individuals want to donate to you, how can they do this?
We have a local giving page that's been set up, so people can donate via local giving. or they can email our info@plymouthhope.org.uk, which will go to staff members on the ground, who will then direct anybody who would want to donate, whether it's financially or materials or anything at all. So that's how the system we have in place for donations. Yeah.
So what are some of the changes you've seen from the time when you came to Plymouth and now? What are some of the changes that you've seen in Plymouth?
Definitely, there is more diversity. There are more people from ethnic minorities background, and that's for various reasons. Whether that's an increase in refugee populations, for example, we've had different resettlement programs in the city, whether that's Syrians or Afghans. We've also noticed an increase in health students from different parts of the world. But city-wise as well, organizations have grown in terms of how they approach work in the local community. There's been more collaboration in a positive sense, and that's because we've always been challenged together collectively by the things that happened outside, like the George Floyd incident that happened and all of that. So there's been changes in a positive sense, despite some of the challenges that we see continue going through. But at least there is a better sense of community, and both the voluntary sector, local authorities recognizing where the problem is. Because when I arrived, there was still a little bit of resistance to actually accept where the problem is. But now we still have challenges, but the people do agree about where the problem is and where challenges are. So, and that makes our work a little bit easier, because then you have the focus, you know what you need to do to make sure that those changes are effective in the community.
But if there was one thing
Yeah.
that you had the power to change in Plymouth today, one thing that maybe niggles you, annoys you, something that you think, this is wrong, we need to change this. What's that one thing in Plymouth that you would immediately change if you had the power to do that?
Systems to make sure that no one is racially abused. That, because I came here as a young person, I wasn't married, and I've got married here, I've got children, and it, despite all the work personally with all humility that I've done to witness that my own children have experienced it in school. So that's heartbroken. So I cannot imagine what it would be like for anyone else who hasn't got a language skill, for anyone else who arrives and hasn't got the opportunity, like for myself. So for me, that is, if there's one change I would want, is to really get in any system to make sure that no one is abused because of the color of your skin.
Thank you, David.
No problem.
Are there any last words that you would like the world to know?
No, I think it's just to thank the community. There's still a lot more to do. So whether we talk about certainly what I've been involved in, whether it's through my employment at the Red Cross, or whether it's Plymouth Hope, or whether it's DBI or Plymouth Hope CIC or anywhere, there's still a lot more to do. So for me, I will encourage anybody else. It doesn't matter what your social background is. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. It doesn't matter even what your language skills are. You can still do something in the community. And challenges will always be there. Let's face it. We are in Britain. We are in England. It's a white country. If you are from a ethnic minority population, don't wait to be called upon. Try and do what you can. You need to show the receiving communities that you are happy to integrate, and wait to see what comes in return. And for me, that's what I've used. If I had sat in my room refusing to play football because someone did not pass the ball to me, I wouldn't have been in Plymouth today, and I would have gone because I was simply upset because someone did not pass me the ball. But I decided to do something about it. So for me, that's the message I will pass on to anybody. It's a community. Everybody has got a part to play, and never really neglect any skill that you have. Every small skill that you have can be useful and impactful for somebody else.
Fantastic. Thank you, David.
Welcome.